Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This KC Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. I'm Ruth Baum Biggis. For Sean Birdsong, sports has been his life. The son of an NBA player, Sean started playing basketball at a young age, ultimately competing on the court in college as well as professionally in the Continental Basketball Association and the Premier Basketball League. While many kids love sports, few make it to the level Sean has experienced. And knowing the transformative nature of sports, Sean saw that participation can mean so much more for kids. So with a commitment to help youth excel at every level, he created American Ballers and its nonprofit arm, the Global Ballers Foundation, providing kids with educational tools that they don't get in any classroom setting. The foundation hosts a variety of sporting clinics and camps, providing a dose of life skills while kids play the sports they love. Sean is joining us today to talk about his efforts and his journey to help kids become the best humans that they can be. And we're so lucky to have Sean with us. Welcome to KC Cares.
Good morning, Ruth. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And it's so good to see you outside of a coffee shop.
Right. That was a very good coffee shop, by the way.
Yeah, we'll put in a plug there for RevoCup. Sean, let's talk a little bit about your journey in sports. I alluded to it, of course, in our introduction, but I want our audience to really know where you come from. And then we can talk about the passion that you've used to create your foundation.
Well, thank you for having me this morning again. I come from I would say, very rich education background as well as sports background. My mother was an educator, Candace Birdsong, for 30 years in the Kansas City, Kansas school district. And my father was an NBA player, Otis Birdsong, played 12 years in the NBA. So I grew up basically having basketball and education really at the forefront since I was a baby. My younger brother and I, Sydney, we of course played various sports, soccer, football, baseball outside with the friends, but basketball was really a center part of us both growing up.
You didn't have quite the normal upbringing, though. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Being the son of a professional athlete, how did that balance at home? You had a mom who was an educator, and then you have a pro athlete. How did they create a balance and share with you what they felt were really the important life lessons?
Well, it's a great question. It was a very unique situation. I do know, I remember the last few years of my dad's playing career in New Jersey. So I was born in New Jersey when he was playing with the Nets. My mother and my father met here in Kansas City when he was playing with the Kansas City Kings. So I believe 1981, when his contract was up with Kansas City and he signed as a free agent to New Jersey. They moved to New Jersey. I was born 2 years later. And I just remember, that last year in New Jersey, from my memory, just players coming over to the house or us going over players' house, me going to the Meadowlands Arena down in East Rutherford, New Jersey, being in the locker room, with a lot of those guys coming in and out, opponents, Michael Jordan and Magic and a lot of those guys. So I think growing up around that, I didn't really understand that it was anything special, I guess you can say. It was just normal to me. But also I remember my mother being, later on we got a little older, she just really has always been a hard worker. And not really just your so-called NBA wife, stay-at-home mother. She did take a few years off, to raise, of course, my younger brother and myself. But I do remember vividly later on, those last few years, my dad's career, she got out there and was like, hey, I'm going to do a part-time thing. I'm going to go out and teach and I'm going to go get out the house and do things like that. So that work ethic from him playing basketball and my mother also being a teacher and all of that, that really kind of shaped at that time the way I was thinking about, okay, we're in the school, but we also going to the arena. We're going to school and all of that. So that was an awesome experience during that time. And then also, his last year in Boston, I remember when he left New Jersey and signed with the Celtics his last year, I remember, us going to Boston and being up there, with Larry Bird and Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale and Dennis Johnson, all those guys. Like that was a good experience within itself, because again, I was a young kid, didn't understand the rich tradition of the Boston Celtics. But as I got older and I looked back on it, I was like, wow, like I was really in a locker room and, in a team meeting with, Jimmy Rogers at the time, who was the head coach, drawing up plays and things like that. And me and, my young brothers running around with balls and things like that. That was a cool situation as well.
I think there's a movie here, but I digress. Be an interesting movie.
Great idea. Yeah.
A peek into the locker room. But you yourself excelled in sports through high school, and then you went into the college experience and then into the pro ranks yourself. So at what point did you make a decision of, it's more than just playing the sport? How did that come about for you?
My senior year in high school, and not too many people know this story. A few people who are around the situation know the story, but not too many people know the story. So in high school, for a few years there, I struggled with, grades and things like that. And one year in particular, from my freshman year going into my sophomore year, I was ineligible the first 5 games of playing basketball because at Bonner Springs High School, where I attended, the grade system was ABCF. There were no D's. Math was always a struggle for me. And I believe it was a Spanish class. It was a struggle for me. So I, unfortunately, if you failed, I believe it was either 2 or 3 at the time, you couldn't play the next semester. So I actually had to sit out. And I think sitting out during that time and actually observing, like, okay, this is really more than basketball, because if you don't get your grades, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do off the court, you really can not play the game that you love to play. So going through those situations in my senior year, I broke my foot 7 games into the season, and I was lost for the season. That was really a wake up call. I believe I had UMKC, New Mexico University, Indiana State University, Kansas, when Coach Roy Williams was there. I was getting a lot of letters and a lot of, calls and things like that going into my senior year. That was also a wake up call to where, I broke my foot and I had to transition and think about, okay, this is really the second time that basketball has been taken away from me. So at that moment, my senior year, I remember like it was yesterday, I was really sitting in my room and I was like, if basketball doesn't work out, I really have to start looking towards the future. And that was when I was 17 years old. So after those situations, I had to go, JUCO, played at Highland Community College for 2 years. And then after that, I fortunately was able to get a scholarship to Lincoln University, HBCU in Jefferson City, Missouri, NCAA school, played there. And that was a great situation itself. But it was just really the grind of trying to get, back, unless you've, to the viewers, having to go through the JUCO ranks and then try to fight your way back to go to an NCAA level type experience, it can really take a mental toll on you. And I even experienced that going into the CBA that first year after I left Lincoln University, as well as far as the mental toll in the minor leagues, playing professionally, having coaches tell you that if you have a couple bad games, you may get sent home. That was a daily reminder to us, all of us in practice, the minor league level. Hey, there's no guaranteed contracts here. That's the NBA level. But if you guys aren't playing up to par, we can send you guys home and bring other guys in. That was the reality of always trying to be on your toes since I broke my foot in high school.
So how and where did you get support? You knew that there had to be something, I guess, to fall back on or continue your life. I mean, you're a young person at that point. What swooped in to support and help you?
During my high school years, I basically had, of course, and I say, of course, because I know a lot of kids aren't fortunate to have it, but that was my reality. When I say, of course, my mother, my dad, even though they had gotten a divorce, when after he retired, he was still involved, in our lives. And my mother was a teacher. I mean, she understood what we were dealing with. And my uncle Mike and my Aunt Sandy and a lot of my grandmother at the time when she was alive, here, like I had a support system from grandparents, uncles, aunts, and of course my mom, but also AAU coaches. We had AAU coaches that also would tell us the reason why I have you guys here in the gym on a Friday night and a Saturday night is to not have you guys in the streets, because we honestly have, even though I played at Bonner Springs, and my mother, she was really savvy because, she's from KCK, and she was savvy. And she told me this when we were, she's like, listen, yeah, you're out here in school at Bonner to get a good education and graduate. But if you're going to play basketball, you need to learn how to play with multiple players, like from all backgrounds and all walks of life. So she put us into AAU team in Kansas City, Missouri with, you had Coach Al Collins, who coached, Earl Watson, NBA great, Jerron Rush, Kareem Rush, Brandon Rush, and Malcolm Campbell, and Jeff Hawkins, and Wayne Simmons, a lot of guys that came through the Running Rebels in Kansas City. So we were a part of that for like 3 years, and we got exposure to go to Las Vegas, to go to Los Angeles. But Gail Collins and also Al Collins, who are our coaches, would say, always keep God first. That's really what we were. That was really our influence as far as, hey, same thing. You get injured, tomorrow's not promised. Keep him first. Go forward in everything that you do, and everything will be great. That was the kind of support system we had growing up. So I went through those trials and tribulations from breaking my foot, and then the grind in college, and then going into the CBA and all of that. I always had those people in my mind as far as what I went back to, when I was younger.
So let's fast forward. This is your life experience. How did you then put American Ballers and your foundation together? And what is it that you wanted or want to accomplish with it?
So after I finished playing, a buddy of mine, Mike Copeland, he actually worked at a place, KVC, it's a behavioral healthcare center. And right. He told me about, giving back to kids, and they were going these outings and mentorship and all of that to young kids. So he said, hey, this may be something that you might want to go into and look into, man. It's really cool, giving back to the kids and all that. So went there, and I actually, interacting with those kids, had a different mindset, seeing the struggles that they had. Of course, I was interested in doing that based on the fact that my family were educators. So giving back to the kids in that way and understanding where they come from, where there was traumas and things like that, that opened my eyes to a lot of the reason why kids act the way they do, and the reason why, honestly, a lot of adults may act the way they do as far as their upbringing. So with me being involved in basketball camps and clinics, after I finished playing, I worked with the Dallas Mavericks for a few years doing skill development with their youth events. And then also that led to me being a part of the NBA assistant coaches program in New York City, to where the NBA prepares you to coach if you want to, the NBA and the NBA G League. So I coach combines and things like that in New York City with a lot of Hall of Famer, Paul Silas, former great NBA player, Hall of Famer, George Lynch, Rex Walters, former Kansas player. A lot of these guys that were getting into coaching, I was in the room with these guys and just picking their brain and listening to them. So doing that, helping the Dallas Mavericks, being involved in other camps, hearing the kids' stories at these camps were kind of touching to where it was, well, we play the game of sports, whether it's basketball, football, and then we go home to our home lives, whether it's mother or mother's there with boyfriend, boyfriend smokes marijuana. I'm seeing this abuse. I'm seeing this. It was almost like, wow, so you guys are really smart kids, but you're going home to this kind of home life that is like a distraction. So in 2018, I had the idea to kind of start my own, I guess you could say, camps and clinics, as far as the nonprofit side goes, to really give back to the kids. Like, okay, instead of us giving, T-shirts and just saying, hey, stay in school, don't do drugs, which is what we grew up on, how about we do a little bit more and like try to add to this to really like try to change the lives of these kids.
We're talking with Sean Birdsong, American Ballers, and his nonprofit, Global Ballers Foundation. So how does this work? And how do you infuse in this, let's say, 2-hour session that you've got with kiddos, some who are coming in with home lives that are, let's say, less than ideal? How do you put both things together so that they can walk out of there and maybe have a little bit of change with both skills?
It's a great question. So a lot of people, they look at professional athletes, whether in the NFL or NBA, as, okay, they're superheroes. Sometimes fans forget that these guys and women in WNBA, that they're human. They have ordinary problems just like everybody else. You just happen to see the glitz and the glamour on TV, but these, individuals do have issues as far as anything that you could probably think of. But 2018, when I started it, I wanted to purposely bring in NBA and WNBA players to come and talk to the kids to say, hey, you definitely can make it, but these are the steps that you're going to have to take. So I just got on the phone with my resources. Fortunately, I had resources growing up to reach out to different players and all of that. So, I would say, hey, I'm doing this basketball clinic or this camp. Would love for you to come in, be like a mentor to these kids, of course, teach basketball skills, but we want to talk about life and education off of the court. And our first event was with the Brooklyn Nets organization in New York City. Brought my father in and brought former NBA All-Star Michael Ray Richardson in, also played with the Knicks and the Nets. And it was a great event. We had about maybe 70 to 80 kids from the New York City area come out to the Barclays Center. The Brooklyn Nets, they laid it out for us. And we were able to have it at their practice facility, which was awesome. The kids loved it. And that was really the start of getting this ball going. The Los Angeles Lakers were next in that, with the great Keisha Nix, vice president over there at the Lakers, and Miss Linda Rambis, who's wife of former NBA player and Laker Kurt Rambis. She invited me out there and was like, hey, we like what you're doing with American Ballers. We'd love for you to come up here and talk to these kids and all that. So after that, we did events with Orlando Magic, and then we went to Houston, and it's just been rolling since then. But I bring in these guys and gals to talk to the kids about education, but also what to do in the community. Our 5 pillars for American Ballers and the Global Ballers Foundation are careers, health, which is your mental health, could be physical health, finance, financial literacy is heavy, entrepreneurship, and also social awareness, which is your drug and alcohol prevention, and also policing in communities, how to interact with the police. And when we were in Houston, we first brought in an individual from the police department. It was back in 2020. It was the first time that I saw, when the police asked, hey, how many of you guys know a cop, or, how many of you guys, interact with police, or how many of you guys are scared of police? And when they asked the question of how many guys you scared of police, a lot of the kids like raised their hand because they only see the negative side of policing. Well, my grandfather was a policeman, growing up, and I have cousins who were sheriff. So I saw the other side of the law as far as, okay, I know that there are good cops out there trying to do the right thing. So we just try to bring that awareness to the kids and all of these topics that we discuss with them at these clinics.
How many clinics are you doing? I mean, are they every month? Are they, and where, and how do you choose the kiddos that get to participate?
Great question. So we reach out to the community, to high schools, middle schools. Our ages are 8 to 17, but we try to more so for the education part. We don't turn any kids down, but for the education part, we really try to talk to the middle school and high school kids, because they're the kids, that's the age group that's really about to go into college if they want to, or if they leave high school, and they're going into a trade. Some of them may not want to go to college. We understand that, but they're at the age to where they can really understand, hey, I'm going to start working. I'm going to start getting a part-time job. I can start worrying about my finances, and also, those kind of saving type habits. So we just reach out to different organizations and say, hey, we're providing this this camper clinic. Would love to bring this to your students. And it's been great. I mean, we started out doing one clinic or two clinics a year starting out, and then COVID hit. But that was a different situation within itself. But fortunately, we held clinics to where we kept our masks on. And then also we had a few clinics to where Tiffany Hayes, she's a WNBA player with the Atlanta Dream. She was like, "Hey, Sean, this is great. I know that the city, I believe the city of Atlanta at the time wasn't fully open yet. I don't believe, but I think parts of the city was. And she had her own gym. So she was like, hey, we can host it here at my gym. And we brought kids from Atlanta out, and she brought Dwayne Bacon. He was the guest speaker. He was a current player with the Charlotte Hornets at the time. He's now overseas playing, but he came and talked to the kids. So we try to get about one a month. Upcoming this year, we're looking at about 5 in July alone. So we've been picking up. Yes, we've been picking up a lot of buzz, and actually have had people calling us, "Hey, we heard about Ballers. We'd like to get you guys involved with our organization here. Or you mind coming out here?" So I'm very, very proud about where we're headed as an organization.
Why did you decide to create a nonprofit arm when you already kind of had a gig going? Why did you decide then, well, we need a foundation. We need to have that be part of this?
That's a great question. So unfortunately, in certain communities of color, kids aren't able to afford your standard basketball camp. And I'm not gonna, go down the list of players who put on camps every year, but there are, some of these teams, organizations, rightfully so, it is a business. They charge X amount of dollars for kids to come and go to the camps. Well, there's some kids that love to play basketball, love to play football, but their parents just can't afford to pay for a basketball camp. So when I got, the idea of, hey, we can give back in a different way. These kids still deserve to have a right to education, have a right to top quality athletes. I'm fortunate to bring in Hall of Fame basketball players and Hall of Fame football players, and it's free for the kids, So I don't want to say it's a disruption to what everybody else is kind of doing, but it's kind of like, hey, this is what I want to offer to the kids, because we know that their parents can't afford to it, but we still want to give back the same knowledge. And, we want to make it we want to make it an even playing field across the board, whether you can pay for a clinic or you can't pay for a clinic.
So by having the nonprofits, you could raise funds and then underwrite costs for kiddos who couldn't come any other way and do that.
Exactly.
And I want to be sure to share with our audience too. He's not just doing, the foundation is not just doing basketball. They're in all kinds of sports. You were recently part of the NFL draft. So it sounds like you're using sports all together, not just basketball.
Yes. And our company, 83 Ventures, I was born in 1983, so that's where I got the concept. Under 83 Ventures, we have American Ballers, Beyond the Court, which is our, podcast that we started when COVID hit. A lot of former players, Rick Barry, Hall of Famer, Marcus Johnson, Hall of Famer, Artis Gilmore, a lot of these guys, George Gervin, at the time we're like, hey, we really don't want to, get on a plane right now. Totally understandable. But, hey, we can have a dialogue and we can still get a message across via online. I was like, okay, that's even better. So that's when we started that. Nothing But Net Sports was our training business, is really how we train kids, and whether it's physical fitness, basketball clinics, camps, things like that. And then American Ballers and the Global Ballers Foundation. So we pretty much try to really give back to the youth on a variety of ways, as well as parents. We try to educate parents, and I try to bring in professionals from the community to talk about, whether it's mental health, whether it's, talking to the parents about not being too hard on your son or daughter. Is just a game. We always get thrown out the sports mom or sports dad, but if you've never really lived it, a lot of these parents, unfortunately, don't understand that when you put pressure on your kids to play a sport or to do anything really, you're kind of steering them away from what you want them to do. They're going to back off of it, and they may If you're writing a kid saying, hey, you need to get up and do this, and they really don't want to, by the time they're a freshman or sophomore in high school, they're probably just going to quit. And we've seen that before. So we try to talk to the parents as well, as not really trying to tell them how to parent, but when it comes to the sports thing, it's like, hey, we know we've seen this before. It's like, back off a little bit, let them enjoy the game. Let them enjoy school. Let them enjoy the things that we all enjoy. Don't try to push them too hard.
Great advice. What's the best place for our audience to go check out what you're doing with the foundation and overall? Your website?
Yes. So our website is American/Ballers. So that's American-ballers.com. And also Instagram. I'm at the Sean Birdsong on Instagram, and also our LinkedIn, Sean Birdsong on LinkedIn.
Running the nonprofit component of your activities, what's the greatest challenge that you face?
The greatest challenge I face, besides raising money.
Well, there you go, raising money. So, any tips for anybody, or how can they support you? I was going to say, is there an opportunity for volunteers to work with you in any fashion?
Well, and I say that's one of them. One of the problems is to raise money, but I'm really particular in who we involve. And that's where I guess that's kind of a struggle, because I'm not a person. I was never raised this way to just, hey, go try to seek funding for an organization from anybody. The one thing that I told the players when I first started American Ballers is, hey, are you guys involved with kids? Everybody who's been involved in American Ballers, and you can look at our website, the players who've been involved, they either all have a foundation, they either all have kids themselves, or they're involved in some type of basketball component or education component. I never want to just bring in anybody to just tell the kids a different message or a wrong message who aren't really invested. And that's kind of the approach that I have when it comes to fundraising and the nonprofit world. I want to align myself, with people who want to give back to the community, who want to service the community. And of course, who like sports, but also see that there's life beyond sports. So many times in the world now, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I try to get across, if we as a society put more into the kids, I think, in my opinion, the world would be a better place, because the kids are the next generation coming up who are going to take care of us. But what we see is so many adults trying to take care of other adults, which I understand it. But if we invested that much money into the younger generation, I think it would be a better place. I think, Charles Barkley, I'm not sure if you watch Inside the NBA or not on TNT, but Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Milwaukee Bucks had a great line after the game that they lost to get eliminated in the playoffs. And it was going around, it went viral. He was basically telling the reporter, when he asked him, it's like, do you view this season as a failure? He was like, why would I view this season as a failure? He was like, first of all, I'm in the NBA. He was like, we are champions. He said, but there's steps to the process. He said, do you look at your job as a failure if you don't get promoted every couple years? Do you look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I'm a failure because I know I got promoted 3 years ago, but I haven't gotten promoted in a few years. So everything you've done up to that point is a failure? No. And I love when Charles Barkley made the analogy of, hey, teachers are the real, people who aren't failures. Like, they're the real success stories. It's not really professional athletes. I mean, yes, we got to a certain point. My father got to a certain point. There's many guys who got to that point. But after the playing days are gone, what's the next step? And so many of us athletes, we understand that, we know that, but I think that needs to be talked about more just in society as, yes, this is a great game, whether it's football or basketball, but we need to start investing in education, investing in the youth coming up, because they're going to be where we are in a few years.
Sean Birdsong, you are a wise soul. We want to send our audience again to American-Ballers.com to check out what their nonprofit is doing, helping youth use sports, but learn those life lessons. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Ruth, for having me on. And you're doing great things in the community as well. I got a chance to be with you at the 120th celebration at JFS, a while back. So you guys, keep up the great work, and I appreciate you having me.
You betcha. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, also a nonprofit. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. Well, to be a guest on KC Cares, find all of our episodes, visit our website, kccaresonline.org. Spread the love. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio, and Instagram, we're at KC Cares Online. And catch us Saturday mornings on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM at 8 AM. Thanks for joining us on KC Cares.